Hello and welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. I'm so excited. This is exactly what I was hoping to get out of season 5, which is real specific, almost practice underwater like calls with people who struggle with certain leadership situations, conversations that they need to have with team members. So we have someone who emailed us in and said, I have a team member that I'm struggling with. There's actually two doctors, and you'll hear them here on the call. And it's you'll hear in a minute. It's a conversation they were dreading having. And so we had Murray Lowe on the call, and he talks us through this, and we talk through the various aspects of having this conversation and dealing with this issue. So without me spoiling too much, I'm just so excited. I'm giddy. I just finished this interview like minutes ago, and I'm so excited for you to hear it. Here we go with the Shared Practices podcast. Welcome. We have a special episode of the Shared Practices season today. First off, I get to welcome back a co-host that I haven't had on the show for a while. So welcome back, Murray Lowe, to the show. How have you been?
Been great. Been surviving in this COVID-19 era, and excited to start doing work virtually. That's great.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming back on. And we had a listener request. We had an email come in a while ago, and fortunately, due to COVID-19, fortunately, the issue that came up has never had a chance to get addressed, and so now life is beginning to go back to normal, and the question that was emailed in, there's a chance for us to work with this. So I wanna welcome to the show, 2 doctors, working on the East Coast. We're not gonna say where. We're gonna use some fake names. So we're gonna call Dr. Christy and Dr. Sara. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi. Hello.
Hey. So, we got an email from you, about an employee, and I would love it if you guys shared with us, um, some of the things that have happened in your practice that made you concerned enough that you wanted to send out an email and talk about this situation.
Yeah. So, Sarah or Christy and I, we had just closed. We had transitioned this practice last year in July. Yeah, thank you. It's been a crazy year so far, but
what a year.
So the seller's still on. He's awesome. He's great. He basically is now part-time, and we're just, we're adding 2 doctors in as well. So we have 3 of us there, but probably we're equivalent of 2 on any given day. Now, interestingly, the seller, he didn't really he had a lot of help. He had a lot of help running his practice. He had a consultant that basically was kind of like an office manager, because she was a friend of him and his family. So she was in there fairly frequently, especially towards the end. And then this particular employee, Anne, she is our treatment coordinator, or financial coordinator. She talks to patients about finances and their treatment plans. So she's in the front office as well as doing other front office duties, but she was a really integral part in this system that the consultant set up. And she really knew how everything run. She's great. She's very loyal. She's very honest. She's very thorough, to a fault, I would say sometimes, very particular. So it's great in a lot of financial sense. She's good at her job. She's good at doing things. The issue that we have is that,
Actually, I'm going to pause you here.
Sure.
If that's okay. I wanted to see just a little bit more of the anatomy of your practice overall. Sounds like it's a bigger practice, being a 2.5 dog practice.
We have.
So how many front desk, back office? How many total team members do you have?
We have 3 in the front. We have 1 that's kind of focusing on doctor schedule. We have a hygiene coordinator scheduler, so she's focused on hygiene. And then we have Anne, who is our financial treatment plan. Like, she just talks finances. It's supposed to be her job. And she kind of does insurance verification and stuff like that. They all are cross-trained. They all do somewhat of everything. But that in theory, it's been especially more fluid right now when we haven't been opening at like full capacity.
Sure.
But typically it's like they would schedule with the person that they're supposed to schedule with, depending on hygiene doctor, and they would talk in terms of finances for whatever it is with Anne. We have 4 assistants on any given day, and we have 3 hygienists on any given day. So we have 9 ops in total, but we're really only utilizing like 7 to 8 on a day, and then the other 2 are kind of overflow.
Okay, so this is a healthy,
Yes.
bustling practice. This is like for George. This would be one of George's like ideal practice.
Yeah.
He loves your size, multi-doc, multiple hygienists, really rocking and rolling. So that's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah. It's been kind of crazy. I mean, it's been good. But yeah. Um, so typically how at least in terms of patient flow, the systems that they had in place, which okay, so going back to that, we had to learn more of these systems from Anne. The consultant kind of stepped away once the practice transitioned. That's just her policy, totally fair. There was a lot of tension between this consultant and the team in general. Basically, only Anne was the one that liked her and that she pretty much liked. I mean, so there's a lot of background on that. We actually won the staff over very quickly, I think, because the consultant wasn't there, and they kind of thought we got rid of her. We told them like, no, we didn't actually get rid of her. It's just that she doesn't transition. But they're just like, they were very happy. So we won them over quickly, and that kind of helped us. But anyway, Anne is the one who knows most of the systems, and they're fair. All the system, everything that how they've been running, that's why they've done so good. That's why this practice is so healthy that we bought it, is due to most of these systems. So the back office, it's supposed to be the any of the clinical staff, the hygiene or assistants are supposed to treatment plan stuff into our practice management software. We use Dentrix. So they're supposed to put it in, they're supposed to complete the thing before we don't have routing slips. So they're supposed to do everything in the computer and then come up, and then it's all ready for the front office once they get up there. Where the most common issue that we see with Anne is that someone forgot to put something in, or they forgot to complete it, or they forgot to do something. It could be as simple as they didn't complete the appointment, they didn't hit the button that said like, oh, we're done. And so she goes up there, she's like, you guys didn't complete it. Go, and she basically would have them go to the back again, which is, it's a big office, so they just have to go and then come back, and then the patient's waiting there.
And the patient hears this
Yeah.
interaction. The patient hears her kind of get snippy with that team
Yeah.
member because they didn't do what they were
Exactly.
supposed to.
And sometimes,
Okay.
she has like a smallish voice. So, I mean, like sometimes it sounds like, oh, okay, like you're like, oh, just, you should complete it. But at the same time, depending on her tone, especially, it can be pretty snippy, and depending on how flustered she is, she'll get flustered if there's like 2 patients waiting for her. Like if we have a little backlog, she'll start to get very snippy, I guess. So that's the most common thing that happens. And at the same time, when they do forget something, she's like, oh, she just won't. One of the other, if they go to one of the other front desk ladies, they'll just put it in and they'll complete it. Not a big deal. But for Anne, I don't know what the holdup is. That sometimes she'll I don't think she does it. She'll just have them go somewhere else to do it. And she does it. Sometimes really it should be the clinical staff that's putting it in, that's completing it, because she doesn't always know exactly what was done. So I understand that. It's true, like this is how it should be, and we do need to do some training on this with our staff in general. We have to do some brush up and things, but it's just that's not how we want to be talking in front of patients or treating our other staff members.
Is there any other instances where Anne's communication style is either kind of aggressive, or when patients aren't around and there are other things that aren't completed, or is there other things that she does that has created tension between her and other team members?
Yeah, one would be considering like for palliatives, for instance, you have to have a narrative that goes along with it, and with those procedures, sometimes you just move on to the next one. You don't necessarily write the narrative right away. Well, like she wants it right away because that's what her thing is. She wants to complete everything right then and there, which makes sense. But then we kind of get sometimes a message out that's a little bit aggressive, or sometimes even passive aggressive, that says, definitely tells us that we did do it. We didn't put the narrative in, and then that kind of everyone's just like, okay, well, why can't she help out a little bit? Or so it's kind of it's like it's warranted, but it's just how it's communicated isn't always most pleasant, I guess. We have a message system in our practice because it's so large, where you can basically every person has a noise that's associated with it. So you can kind of bang other people into certain operatories or to the front office. And with that, In our operatories, you can only hear the sounds. You can't really type or anything because it's on a tablet. But if you're on a computer, and there are certain computers in certain stations, you can also send out messages. So whenever she sends out a message, she's always in all caps. It's always, and I don't think she's doing this purposefully. I think it's just that she is always, but it just sounds like she's like, yelling at you. I think there have been a few times that she actually apologized for the all caps, and then it just switches to all lowercase caps, like with like no, punctuate. I don't know, but anyway, I think it's just she types with all caps for insurance purposes for some of the things that she's doing, and then it just translates. She just doesn't take the all caps off, but she does tend to do it a lot, and it just sounds like she's screaming at you. I don't know. I don't think she means it, but at the same time, I think she does. So I don't really know. I'm not really sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, and one of the things you wrote in the email is that you said, to summarize, we love Anne and her work ethic, but it seems to be one of the main points of stress and contention in our practice.
Yeah.
So this seems like it's coming up, like other team members are bringing this up to you, or you're recycling back to this, or it wouldn't have been stressful enough that we got like a page long email about her things that she's doing in the office. But it also doesn't seem like any of it is overt enough to like put your finger on it sometimes with her and say, that is unacceptable, and kind of call her out in the moment, or hold someone accountable type
Right.
things, or pull her aside afterwards. So is that an accurate picture of the situation, that she's kind of the most stressful part of your practice right now?
Yes, I would say that's a very good summary of it. None of it is something where we can call out in the moment. She's not like yelling. She's not actively yelling at anyone. And the thing is, even the message, she's in the right for a lot of the things. Like, this is how what she's asking and what she's kind of telling people to do is how it's supposed to be done. There are times when when we don't treatment plan things right away, like if the where it does break down really bad and where she gets really stressed out is if our assistant or the hygienist really didn't organize the treatment plan, and they come up and they're like, here's the patient, okay, tell them what they're supposed to do, and then she's just like, oh, it's not in here, like what. So I understand, like, when there are times when the back staff really doesn't do anything, it's really stressful on her, and then she has to go ask them or ask us, like, what are we supposed to actually tell this patient? What am I supposed to tell them? Or what am I printing out for them so that they know what it costs? So I get it. And that has happened. So before listening to your awesome podcast, and Murray with everything, we were basically, our plan was to address the clinical staff so everything gets done correctly. But so we were figuring, like, if we fix the thing that's going wrong and like everyone actually puts everything in and the system's going right, that Anne won't have so much to complain about or be upset about, because it is something where we understand why she'd be upset. But the thing is, it's not only that, it's also how she yes, we want to fix that. Yes, we want to do training, and we're actively doing. We have someone coming out next month, but we can't have her interacting like that. Like, when she does interact with the staff, they're complaining about her to us. And it's something where we don't know how to address that. Or especially when she's doing that in front of patients, like, we can't have her all snippy, and it doesn't look good if our staff is kind of passively, like, almost arguing, but not. Like, you get that little tension that you feel when like the parents are arguing, but you're not sure. That's how I kind of feel it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and she's described us as not being helpful. Like, that's kind of like what we get a lot of feedback is she's not being helpful. Like, can she just help out sometimes? Or, we're stressed out in the back here. We have so many things going on. It's just like, can't, and so there's a lot of, like, just you can hear the frustration. And we just don't know how to address that with her, or if it's a team thing. We just, like you said, we can't pinpoint, like, and I'm sure there's it's probably very, probably factors into it, but we just want to try to, the best we can address it so that we can have because it's a great staff. It's a great practice. Our patients love coming to us, and we have a lot of very loyal patients, and we want to continue that. And this just seems to be kind of like that pebble in our shoe, and we want to address it in a healthy way and like a productive and effective way, without we don't want to single anyone out and make them feel bad. We just, like want them to recognize what's going on and what our vision is and what we want our practice to be like, and for our patients, but also for our staff to work in, because we're a desirable place for people to want to work too. So we like that.
So let me check in with a couple of things on this situation with Anne. Again, when I look at conversations, I think, is this a performance issue or is this a behavioral issue? What I hear is that 99% of this is a behavioral issue. I often work with people who say, these new employees, they do great work, but they just have a terrible attitude. And so dealing with an attitude or dealing with this is what we're talking about, not the performance. You love the performance, you love everything she's doing, but the way she's doing it is actually creating noise in the system. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay. And would you describe Anne as someone who, again, as working in a dental office, she clearly understands who patients are and what their role is, and she tries to regulate and modulate her behavior in front of patients. Doesn't always succeed, but with the other staff, doesn't modulate her behavior at all. So she has two different ways of behaving. One is, when the patients are around, I'm going to try and put my best face forward. When they're not around, I don't have to do that.
Well, actually, she's not able to actually mask in front of patients. That's kind of our dilemma a little bit, because we want her to be more professional and, in front of patients. We don't want the patients to suspect that something is going wrong or that someone did something bad. And that's actually something we want to address, is that it's hard for her to mask her emotion. Well, she can't really regulate it very well.
I mean, so one question here, though, is even if she was able to perfectly mask in front of patients, but then as soon as patients were gone and she was just talking with the team members, it sounds like there would still be tension and stress interacting with her. If she had a switch that she could turn on and off better, and you got her to turn that switch on every time she's talking with patients, but then she still switched it off when the patients were gone and she's interacting with the rest of the team members, that might still be a problem.
That would still be a problem. Yeah. She's not, and like, that's the other, yes, like she is different to the staff, but at the same time, she's not like she's rude. It's rude in that there are times when she, like, you can still see it in her face and she'll be a little short and snippy, but like, she's not actively saying like, oh, she's not saying anything mean. Like, she's not saying anything. And she is kind of passive aggressive. Like, it's just like, her behavior is where it's just like, okay, we kind of, got her a little angry, or like got her annoyed. We can tell that she's annoyed. But she's never like, I don't know. At least she's not like vengeful or anything. She's not actually.
Yeah, no. She's not rude. She's not discourteous. Again, she knows how to regulate and modulate her behavior in some way. She may not always say the right things. Another question: what percent of the time do you think Anne is frustrated at work? Is she frustrated 20, 40, 60, 80? She may not be expressing anything, but how much of her day does she go around, you think, being a little on edge?
I'd say 50% of the time, at least. Yeah.
50% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least. Yeah.
60. Well, if she's acting out, yeah. Let me ask this differently. What percent of her time does she interact with you and the other staff in a way that you think is great?
10.
10. Okay. Well, I'm guessing. Yeah. I'm guessing she's probably frustrated most of the time.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I ask you that question is, how many of your financial staff also work with patients? This is not a conversation question. This is a structural question, because I used to be an accountant. Mm-hmm. And so, I started working, and one thing I noticed pretty quickly is that some of my other fellow accountants weren't that sociable. They weren't the greatest communicators. So is she the only staff member you have who has both a patient-facing role as well as an internal kind of numbers accounting type role? Does she have a more difficult role than everyone else in your office? And that's part of the question, right?
Yes, in that's her role in terms of, yeah. So really, she's the one that's supposed to be, the way that it was set up with how it's been running is that, yes, she's the one that talks finances. However, the other two front ladies also do. It's not their primary role. The one of them is very new. We actually just acquired, like we just hired her the beginning of this year, but she has experience with this. So, and we're finding out she's actually very good. She's very good. Like she actually would be a really good financial coordinator. And well, she'd be good at talking to patients. She's better at talking to patients. And the other one, she's been with us now for maybe a year and a half. Like when we acquired her, no, I guess like 2 years. So when we acquired the practice, she had been there for just under a year. And she was being trained to be cross-trained to know what Anne is doing. So now those other two know how to do it. They do it sometimes, or rather it's more the one that's the doctor schedule, the one who's been there a little bit longer. She has been doing it also with Anne in terms of at least presenting to patients. But when we're busy, when we're in the flow of things, it's typically Anne is the one who's talking about it. So yeah, in terms of talking finances, yeah, that with patients, that's her, and that is difficult. That is always patients are happy with us in the back, and then it's when they have to talk money that's where sometimes things break down.
So not only is she dealing with patients, but sometimes unhappy patients or reluctant patients. She knows hopefully how to get people to pay. So would you say then the core issue then with Anne is that it's her ability to communicate with patients and with people when there are problems or issues that come up? Would you suggest that do you think that's the core issue there?
Yeah.
Being able to be more positive in her approach.
Yes. It's when things don't go as planned or the way that it's typical, then that's where we'll have some issues. Or she'll struggle. She'll struggle when it's not perfect, when something's going awry.
Yeah, and like for me, I think that we all have that a little bit in our personality where we want a perfect day, but I think over the years I've kind of come to understand that something's always surprise us. So I try not to set, like mentally for myself, I try not to set myself up for a perfect day. I just kind of set myself up for, okay, something is going to come up. We're going to have to deal with that and kind of like accept it as a part of life and dental life. And so I think that eases the pressure for her. It seems like sometimes even in the mornings, like when I say good morning, it's just kind of like it already feels like she's had a bad day when she's just looking at the schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, we're starting again. So I'm not sure if it's like, and I know she wants to be there. Like, I mean, she says that, and like with everybody, she, like really likes her group, and we do kind of extracurricular stuff, and like going out, for our dinners and stuff, like Christmas dinners and stuff, and she's part of the team. It's just sometimes I feel like, she has a particular way in which she like wants the day to go, and maybe we need to be aware of what those things are. Or, I mean, at the same time, it's like we have to develop our vision and kind of impress that upon everybody. And we're working on it. And so it's like everything's kind of feels like it's up in the air. We have such a good practice. We want her to be a part of it. We want her to be there when everything like really comes to fruition. It's just, we also need her to kind of be understanding of that situation and understanding like what her role would be in that, and that being helpful and trying, she doesn't want to train at all. It's just like, well, can you help us? And like, okay, what needs to be done for this? I've even gone, because I got really frustrated because she was kind of getting frustrated with me. And I was like, okay, when you go to the ledger to check out a patient, what do you do? What exact button do you press on? Because I'm putting the treatment plan in some other folders and I want to see what she's actually looking at. And then I could understand, okay, that's why the treatment plans aren't looking like this and stuff. So it's like on our end, we don't know what, I needed to know how she was checking things out. So I did my investigation on that. So we tried, troubleshooting that. That's still not perfect. But it's kind of a battle in that. Like we just,
so going back, the behavior is a function of her attitude. If she's only doing stuff 10% of the time in a way, or 20, let's give Anne the benefit of the doubt. Let's say 25% of the time she's interacting with staff really well. I'm guessing that means that 75% of the time she's unhappy. When you start interacting with people in negative ways, it's typically because you're not happy, right? And so we've got the first question when you deal with behavior as opposed to performance. Well, even in behavior and performance, is to ask, is this a skill problem or a will problem, right? Is she knows she's supposed to, I assume, well, does she know that she's supposed to treat you and other people with more respect, and that she just doesn't want, or You could ask the question, does she not have the skill to deal with all the issues and problems that happen in her life, sometimes before work, and sometimes, does she have the skill to be able to effectively manage her emotions so that she can deal with life and the problems that come up and not have it ruffle her? Is it a will issue or a skill issue? What do you think around that?
I don't know. I'm not actually sure. Like, I think in terms of her, I want to say it's a skill issue in terms of her not interacting well, in terms of, I don't know that she knows how. I don't know. I don't know that she knows how to, interact.
I think you're perfectly right in the sense that it's a skill issue, and there are two skills. One is, the first skill is, can I manage my emotions and positively in the dental practice and in my life and getting in and doing all this stuff. And the second is, once I know how to manage my emotions positively, am I an effective communicator? But you can't be an effective communicator if you can't manage your emotions, right? If you can't, and so that's why. So it sounds like, so if you're going to have a conversation with her, it really is a conversation with her around, have you talked to her about have you had any okay, let me ask, what types of regular interactions or performance conversations have you had with her around her job or performance, how she's doing work, or what's been communicated with her and what hasn't been so far?
Not much, to be honest. We haven't had. That's something we're kind of developing in terms of how we got into the practices that we kind of told everyone, it's like, we want to learn what everyone's doing, and then we want to hear from you so that we could then figure out what we're going to hold everyone accountable to, like what your job is. Like, so we kind of know what it is, but we haven't actually sat down and spoke to them about. So we've had a meeting with all of our staff individually where we talked to them about how, their position or their job, or how they think we're doing, how what we can do, and we're just trying to figure out from them. That's something that we've been working on in COVID, is trying to figure out protocols and office manuals and all this kind of stuff. And so we actually haven't had that conversation with her of our expectations of exactly what her job is, and what is expected of her entirely.
Exactly what her job is and how she needs to perform. Right. It's not just the what, the how.
Okay.
Fortunately, you've got COVID, and fortunately, you also just purchased a practice. You're coming up on an anniversary here, right? So you have an opportunity to sit down with each employee, with each person, with each of your colleagues, and talk to them about what you're trying to do, right?
Right.
And they will work with all your employees, and Anne in particular, she needs to understand two things. She needs to understand that you are 100% committed to her success, that you guys have her back, and that you want her to succeed. And number two, that you really respect who she is as an individual and as a person and what she brings to the practice. And you've already indicated that you do that. If she understands those two things, then you're just going to have to lay stuff out, right? And let her know, we love the work you do, managing all these pieces that you end up managing. And there's a piece here that what you're doing is the right thing. The way it's being done isn't working as well. And then you probably want to go into the heart of the issue, which is not the way she's communicating, but it's getting frustrated. I could say, seems like when I work with you, when we work together, that you're not happy about 75% of the time. And I would just, we think that it's pretty hard to deal with patients and deal with all the stress and everything that happens in a dentist day, when life is kind of tough. And I would ask, so what's going on with you, and really understand where Anne is at in her life, and have just a real honest and open conversation, just to see if this is something she wants to work on. Because it'll help her not only at work, it'll help her in her personal life as well, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if she's coming to work upset, then it's probably something that happened before she even got to the office that's occurred. So it's a great skill around that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I know
Now,
she's definitely a dedicated and doting mom. And I feel like there's a lot of she has a lot of structure at her home, and maybe she can have that more of that control and structure at her house. And then perhaps coming to our office, it's not as much in her control. That might be very frustrating. I think they probably have a very good schedule. They do what they're supposed to. Everything's very clear at home.
they're not teenagers yet. Trust me. This only works. This only works until they get. Actually, these days it only works until they're about 4. But yeah, you have the illusion of control in your personal life.
Yeah.
You have the illusion of control. When in reality, there may be the same. Again, you don't need to go into her personal life, but it really is a conversation around, how do we make this work for you?
Right.
You need her to be happy because you want the office to be happy, and you want the patients to come away feeling like, well, I had to get my teeth done. This was the greatest place on the East Coast to be able to do it, right?
Right.
One thing you struck me too is she actually does very well if she knows what she's supposed to do and she does it right. So if I find, especially in the beginning, I found when we praise her, when we compliment her and oh, you did a really good job with that, she takes that to heart. That makes her feel good and that makes her do better. So that actually smooths out a lot of things when you be like, good job with that. I know that was difficult. Good job handling that. And it would be, I think, if once we do actually have clear cut, this is what we expect from you. This is how we want you to do it. This is how we expect you to be successful in this position. And she does it. She likes to be successful. She likes to know that she's doing a good job. So I think that will actually go over well, I guess.
Well, and you'll have that list of all the things she's doing right.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully there's 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 things. And there's only 1 or 2 things that she needs to work on, right? Which is, again, how she's communicating in front of patients and communicating with the staff. And unless you go to the underlying issue, which is her being able to deal with change and all the vagaries and all the problems and issues and challenges, and then at the end of the day, maybe there's a different role for her, right? In your practice, one that if she's that dependable and that reliable, there may end up being a different role. At the end of the day, you want to be happy and you want her to be happy as well.
Yeah.
But she needs to feel like you guys are super appreciative of all that she's doing, and recognize there's just this little teeny piece that's not working, and let's figure that out.
So I have a question for you, Murray. What if she doesn't see it? What if they bring this up to her and she kind of just defers it and puts it back on everyone else, and she's like, "Well, they're not doing their job, so of course I get a little bit frustrated." Um, would it be worth it to role play? Okay, how does this look when someone is frustrated and they're interacting with a patient or a team member in front of a patient versus what's another way to do this? And role playing or modeling a way to say, "Hey, you know what? I just checked the system. I didn't see the treatment plan in here. I really, for this next step, I gotta have that in there. Do you have a second to run back to the room and, plug this into the computer for me?" And kind of role play what it would sound like to interact with a team member in a positive way that doesn't throw them under the bus and doesn't become confrontational. Is that worth doing? And I guess I just asked 2 different questions.
No.
What if she doesn't recognize it? And then, how to give her more skills?
So let me answer the second one first. That's an easier question because we worked in a hospital system where we're working with healthcare workers who would go into patient rooms, and we actually gave them a script that included 5 things, and they were supposed to ask. And so having a script, if there's a way she does something that doesn't work, and you can just ask her and say, "Hey, instead of doing this, can you do it this way?" Yeah, having those things, which is like was suggested. Hey, usually I was expecting this to be done by this time and it didn't get done And then the question is, when can you get it into the system, as opposed to get this into the system now, you idiots, before I blow a fuse, right? Sorry, that's maybe that might be the feeling.
Just feeling, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it's when, so having her ask the question rather than demand would be great. Going back, so oftentimes people, what they do when you try and hold a behavior conversation is they try and they're like Teflon. It's like they can kind of slide to the side and nothing sticks to them, right? And so they'll blame other people. They might even throw it back in your face. They might come back and say, well, you guys aren't as good as the former owners, or they'll start blaming you. And typically those are strategies that people use to divert your attention away from the real issue, right? And when that happens, you just have to reassure Anne and say, and we recognize that they're not doing things right, and that doesn't give you a free pass to then, right, to then get upset or frustrated with other people. We're all learning. We all working on this together. We all got to create a positive environment. So yes, and we will work on that. We're bringing in a consultant. We will do everything in our power to do this. But in an office as big as you've got, I don't think you're ever going to get to the point where you're going to be stress and mistake free. It's just, dentistry, taking care of people's mouths and teeth, and that is the number one issue. And some of these other things are just maybe not going to always go smoothly.
Yeah.
And if Anna expects that, that's why you need to get into the conversation with Anna about, how happy are you and what would make you happier, and is there a different role potentially? But if she gets defensive and starts blaming others, you got to say, agreed. So don't defend. You're say, we're perfect, but agree. Say, you're right. I mess up. We all mess up in the back office. We are not the best back office to work with. We might be the worst back office you've ever worked with. So that's fine. But I would say not. Don't say but. Say and. And that doesn't give you a pass to get frustrated or annoyed with us. That's kind of where we're in. And if this isn't the type of role that makes you happy, let's figure. I wouldn't go there first, but I would. You need to ask her the question. How frustrating is it for you to work in this dental practice? And then literally, listen. Be silent for 10 seconds. And if she throws it back, no, I need to know what's going on for you and how this is working for you. Because if someone's not happy 75% of the time, they're either A, an unhappy person, or B, it's really not working for them. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I'm guessing it's probably a little bit of both. And both of those things can be worked on. There are ways to work on your emotional skills where you can become a much more positive person. So some of that was in the book Crucial Conversations we talked about earlier. That is a learnable skill, how to deal with problems and frustrations and personal challenges and emotions. That's very learnable. It's also a learnable skill to figure out, how do I then communicate and ask these things given those scripts.
I think a part of this is our fear that we do bring it up, and she's just like, nope, this isn't. I guess it's like we don't want her to get like so upset that she's just like, okay, this isn't for me. She like walks away. And
okay, so let's play that out. What if she does say that? Say, because I'm guessing she's had this feedback before. She's probably trying to work on it, and she's probably trying to do better. And she may not even had an experience where someone threw her under the bus before, and so she's maybe waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Mm-hmm. She's waiting for you guys to come back and tell her that it's not working for her. So what if she does all of a sudden, you tell her all the good things she's done, and you point out all the wonderful things. Then you get into this point of the conversation, and she just says, you know what, this just isn't for me. I'll go find a job somewhere else. Christy and Sara, help me what are you going to say to her in the moment?
I don't know. No, I mean, it would be something, well, we really like working with you, and I mean, we love you. You're great. We support you in whatever you need to do, but I really hope that we can work this out. I really hope that we can figure out a way for you to thrive in this office and we have, if there are frustrations all around, it's not only you, it's there. We have to work with other staff members, with our systems and everything, but we're hoping that you could join, stay with us and help us throughout this time, and together we can have this practice where we help all of our patients and practice our dreams.
That was perfect. That was that was awesome. You just that just came right out of you. You just reassured her, we love you, we want to work with you. Say this is not any type of a conversation that's going to suggest that we're trying to get rid of you. We feel like you're an integral part of this office. We see you here in the future moving forward. We want to work with you on this. You're so valuable to us, and we think this is an issue that is fixable. That's why we're bringing it up here, right? We think this is a doable, fixable thing, and we're committed to help. If you want to find a dental practice where you can be here for the rest of your career, this is it. We're here. We're here to offer you, job security for the next 20 years. You really want to reassure her that you're not trying to get rid of her, because she might, right? And that's your worry, is that she's gonna.
I mean, it's not a big thing on our list. We think that she, over time, the time that we've been at the practice, I think we're pretty sure she's not going to go that direction. But just whenever you bring something to someone's attention, you're not always exactly sure how they're going to respond.
As you think about actually holding this conversation with Anne, what are you worried about? How do you envision this, what you're going to say and how you're going to approach it? Those are two different questions. What are you concerned about, and how do you actually envision the conversation? What are the things you're going to say to get this going, to move into this?
I guess what I'm actually worried about is, so she's pretty sensitive. That is something where Anne is actually very sensitive. And she knows it. And I mean, and the staff knows it, as the ones who've been there for a long time. Like, she'll cry sometimes, like in the back, if something's happening. So I worry that she'll just get really upset and be handling that. And just, I guess the worst case scenario is that she quits and she leaves. But I don't think that that's what would happen. I guess that is something that's a really, worst case scenario that would not be good. But I just worry about making her feel bad, and then how that, like, if she feels bad and we didn't handle it well, and then how is she going to interact with the rest of the staff? Like, I don't know how her interactions will change if she thinks that she's.
We don't want her to feel singled out. I mean, the situation seems to revolve around her a little bit, but we don't want her to feel like it's like, okay, it's got to be you. This is all on you. It's not. Right. We understand. We recognize it's a team thing that's creating a stress. That's creating a stress for her. That the way that she's emotionally managing it. That's where it's becoming an issue. Is just that it's showing to patients. It's showing to our staff, and we feel like it's something that it's like one of the only things that we really want to tweak so that we can just make it enjoyable for everybody.
Good. That's fantastic. How can you describe it to her so that it feels like it's a tweak as opposed to a fundamental personality flaw, right? Because if to her it feels like it's a tweak, she probably will react with less volatility than if she feels like it's fundamental personality flaw. And it's not a fundamental personality flaw. Being able to react to stress is tough. It's a very difficult thing.
Even describe that to her, maybe, we understand that this is a stressful environment, that a lot of things don't go right every day. We're very aware of it, and it's something that we really do want to work on. We really need you on our team to help us get to that point. But in the meantime, things are going to be shaky. Things are going to get to a pretty stressful point. And what we would like in our office is for when things get tough, that we dig deep and, see the bigger goal and try to make it, ease through it as much as we possibly can. And how can we do that? How can we help you with that? Like, what would be helpful in those situations where, you're recognizing certain things you need to document, write down, like, hey, 4 times today, the treatment plan wasn't put in correctly, or, do you need to write those things down, or, bring those kinds of attention. So we need to, make sure to focus our training on that, or, Just how can we help you? And I think we've in ways asked her that, but sometimes they just don't have an answer for it. And so I don't know if we can come up with a couple of different scenarios we can give her in managing it, and how she can communicate, how she feels it would be effective for her to communicate that with us, her concerns, her worries, is she, and maybe she recognizes she slowly isn't liking this job, or maybe she's slowly recognizing that if we did tweak a couple of things that would make it more manageable for her, I want her to kind of have some realization on her end too, so that she can try to address some things that maybe she can control.
Another
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go. Well, I was gonna say another thing
No,
that I've heard that I like. I haven't said this to the staff or anything, but I've heard before is when you're in front of patients or even you're on stage, you lead something where you are treated as if you're on stage. Everyone's watching. You put on your stage persona instead of your. I don't know that I would say that, but that's something that I use. I've heard that from one of our study clubs on one of the lectures I came in, and I kind of took that to heart, and that when I was in front of a patient, it doesn't matter what happened before at home or whatever. It's just that patient is my focus, and I am trying to give them the best experience. If they're seeing a play and this is the 100th time that I've done it today, I want them to have the same experience as when I did it the first time. So I like that analogy, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of a fake it till you make it strategy, which is, we recognize, and going back to the earlier point, you don't want to give Anne such an out that you literally take all the responsibility off her, right? Here's what we can do. Here's what we need you to do. And how can we help you, right? Become so that you're not as frustrated. And in fact, you talk about writing things down. Yeah. It wouldn't hurt for Anne to write down, how many times things got screwed up every day, right? She literally writes down I would also ask Anne to figure out what percent of the time was she upset and annoyed versus what percent of the time was she calm and peaceful and happy, right? So she's not just focusing on what you guys are doing wrong. She's got to focus on her taking ownership for her own piece of this, and that'll be the hardest part, right?
I think I liked the stage analogy, and I would almost couple it with another analogy, which is sometimes with our family, the people that we're closest with and that we spend the most time with, we can be the most short and least patient and most direct and say things that we wouldn't say to other people. And the dental office kind of turns into a lot of times a family because you're in the office every day with these people. And so sometimes the way that we communicate with each other, even though these are the people that we spend almost the majority of our lives with, we can kind of lose some of that of the stage performance. So there's two levels. We want to help improve your stage performance and your ability to switch it on and off when a patient is there. But we also want to be able to improve the family relationship that seeps through into every interaction with our patients. And they can feel that. You can feel when there's tension in a room. You can feel when two people don't like each other and they're in the same room. We want our patients to feel like, you know what, I want to be here. I like being here because these people are happy. They get along with each other. And so we want to help you on both sides of that. And maybe even ask her, where do you think would be easiest for you to work on? Do you think it'd be easier for you to work on your stage performance in front of patients? Or do you think it'd be easier to work on how you interact with team members when you're frustrated? And see what she leans towards and use that as an entry point, but not excusing the other side of it. And giving permission that okay, as long as you can perform on stage, you can treat everyone like crap at home.
Right.
So, and that would give you maybe a framework to talk about it without it being as it's on her. This is more of something we all deal with, and it's just a matter of tuning in those skill sets.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome.
I like it a lot too. I love it. And again, as owners of a practice, I hope you want the people you work with to be happy people, right? I think you want her to be a happier person, and that's also got to be a part of it. It's not just going to help your practice; it's going to help her as well.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, what questions do you guys have about any of this? Wrapping up, you're thinking about oh, I'm dreading this conversation, and I would love to do a post-op of this. So if you guys go have this conversation with Anne and it blows up in your face, and you're gonna come back and say, "Hey, you guys, you jerks, you told us this was gonna go well, and we tried to do it." And I'll caveat this with, since me starting, this season and having these conversations with Murray and with Joseph Grenny and with other people, and I went to some webinars, I have bombed some crucial conversations in the last few months, um, and really important ones, and just looked back and realized, "Oh, I guess I did this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong."
Yeah.
But that's part of the learning process too, is not being afraid to step up to the plate and try this and try this out. You go through the prep work, you think through this, you give yourself some tools, and then learning from your mistakes is half the battle as well. So, and there's also been one or two crucial conversations that I've knocked out of the park where at the end of it, we had a difficult conversation about something that could have blown up, and we've got a better relationship by the end of that conversation. Um, so you're not gonna bat 100%, but we would love to if, get a follow-up, and it doesn't have to be that long or whatever, and hear either the successes or things you did right or the things that wish you could go back and change, because there will be follow-on crucial conversations, and this is a journey that all of us, and a difficult conversation. This is a journey that all of us have to go through of learning through doing and trying and failing. So, is there any last questions that you have before we wrap this up today?
Um, Not in particular. I'm just, hopeful that, this is a pretty big one for us. It's hoping maybe we'd have a couple of like practice runs before we go into it.
Yeah, deal with a couple of other employees first. In fact, if you've got one or two that maybe have, these back office issues, deal with a couple of those first, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Don't make this your first one.
And that's what I'm kind of leaning towards, is like whether or not like we're ready to go into this. I mean, it sounds like maybe we need to have, a better, job assessment, like of, what's like expectations are, maybe making sure that that's addressed. Or I'm not sure exactly, but
well, what we do is we talk ourselves out of having this. we end up saying, yeah, we think, okay, if I don't say anything, things will get better, and 9 times out of 10 they get worse, right?
Yeah.
And so there will never be an ideal time, but the fact that you're starting up again and you're coming up to your 1-year anniversary, I mean, I can't imagine an easier setup that allows you to kind of step back and talk about your practice and about how you're working together. I mean, you have this great opportunity now, and you're right. It won't be perfect because you're no dental offices or practice is perfect. But if you want these things to change, by not saying anything, the longer you let it go, the longer it becomes a norm. In fact, by not saying anything thus far, this is gonna come across as a shock to Anne, because she's like, "Well, why didn't you tell me this 4 months ago or 3 months ago?" Right? So the longer you let it go, the harder it is. So sooner or later you gotta do it, but just do it with so much love and care and concern, like you've expressed as we've talked through this. There's no way she could feel like you want her out of this practice.
And that's what we hope for, is we come across the right way, that she doesn't become so defensive. And if she does, you're right. Like we would say, we recognize it or agree with that those kinds of tools kind of help us on our end, not to we don't want to fan the flame. We would want her, to try and, we want to open up a dialogue. We know this isn't going to probably be, if it's settled in the first conversation, great, but it might take a couple of times. So just being comfortable with that, I think.
So you can practice and role play with each other. One of you be Anne and the other one be, like, literally you should try it a few times and say, okay, act defensively, get it frustrated, cry, right? Shut down, blame the other person. So practice this so you can kind of work through it such that, I mean, that's the great benefit of having a partnership. You can bounce these ideas off of each other, right?
Definitely.
And the thing that, Dr. Christy, that you said that I really liked was the intent. There's so much role playing and thought you can do, and all of the prep work will help, but at the end of the day, stuff's not gonna come out right. But if the intent comes across right, and she can sense that we're bringing this up because we care, we're bringing this up because we want you to be successful, we want you to be happy in this practice, and we wanna figure out how we can help you be happier, and how we can help you interact with other team members in a way that doesn't create stress for you and for them. And all of that, if you get that intent across, but you kind of butcher the specific, ninja getting the ways that you say stuff, um, it's gonna be a net positive, to the relationship, and, you'll learn. And that's the other side of it, is that you're gonna learn things that you might not have known coming into the conversation, and the less you assume you understand exactly why she's doing what she's doing, and the more curious you are, about, "Hey, we really wanna try and figure this out," um, she's gonna open up to that rather than you having a set of assumptions about why she's this way or why she's struggling in this way. So that's, I think for me, as long as I'm like, "Okay, if I can get my intent across and I can learn something, then if I screw things up on certain levels, it's gonna be a successful conversation." Would you agree with that or add anything to that, Murray?
I fully agree with everything you just said. Um, I always, when I go into a conversation, I always assume that if I'm trying to help the other person, that they will feel that. And you, as long as you're not frustrated, and if you don't have any kind of an edge or frustration, and you don't bring in those negative frustrations into that conversation, that significantly reduces her doing the same thing.
And I will say the one conversation I really bombed in the last few months, I had the edge, I had not mastered my stories, I was frustrated, and all of that came through. So,
Yeah.
don't that right there is what is gonna sink you. If anything does, it'll be
What we
the
bring.
emotion that you bring and the assumptions that you bring to that conversation. So,
Yeah, you want her to be positive and happy. You guys have got to be positive and happy in this conversation. You got to model it for her.
I do have a question for you too. There's two of us.
Oh, I was gonna say,
yeah,
the exact same question.
When we had our meetings before with our staff, we actually just split them up, and we split us up, and we figured when we want to do this somewhat regularly, and that kind of we did that at the end of last year. We should have done it around March actually, but COVID. So we were thinking, like, do we have this conversation with her with both of us there? I mean, ideally we would both like to be there, but does that, like, the reason why we when we met with our staff before we split it up is we felt like we didn't want to kind of be like 2-on-1. Like, I don't want them to feel like we're coming at her or something. So how would you suggest we go about that?
You're talking about the concept of safety, and you're
Mhm.
worried if they're feeling ganged up on, they're not going to feel
Right,
safe.
right.
Uh, Again, you're in an anniversary situation. You're in a restart situation. If you go in with learning, then yeah, if it won't they won't feel ganged up on if you're there with a learning framework and
Right.
mentality. And this particular conversation, I think it would be helpful because you don't you may hear different things, and you don't want to be played off one against the other. And because sometimes people can do that. Well, Dr. Christie said this, and Dr. Sarah said this, and all of a sudden they like to, so you don't want to give Ann an opportunity to do that. If you're going to do this with Ann, I would do it with everyone. It might take
yeah.
a little extra
Mhm.
time with the restart,
Right.
but say, hey, this is our year anniversary. This is our restart. We're doing this with everyone. But in this particular case, the nice thing about two of you is that if one of you goes reptilian, right, the brain shuts down. You can kind of look at the other person, right?
Right.
So you can kind of, I always say if you're two people in a conversation, one should be pretty engaged and the other should be kind of stepping back and almost like you're in a movie director, right? So you're directing the scene, and then if you need to jump in and help with lines, then you can kind of switch roles. So it allows you to um, it decreases the possibility by having two of you that you're going to get hooked
Mm.
and sucked into a negative conversation. So I think it's fine.
Okay.
Also based on my interaction with both of you, it seems like neither of you are that intimidating.
Mhm.
So if you're not intimidating,
Yeah.
it'll be just fine.
Perfect. All
Well,
right.
and what you said, with the annual review, you just set the expectation that it's like, "Hey, we're just" you've done this with 5 other people before you talk with her. By that point, everyone knows that it's like, okay,
Everyone's
uh, 2 times at lunch, either at the end of the day, do you wanna do it at during lunch or at the end of the day? We're
Yeah.
both sitting
Mhm.
down with you. So everyone knows that everyone's sitting down with both of you. Then that
Mhm.
just makes it like the normal thing rather than like, this is an intervention, you should be worried.
Right.
So well, this has been great. This has been I loved, this whole conversation because you came with a nuanced problem. This wasn't this like, "Hey, we have an easy solution, just come and screw this screw or turn this bolt or, fix this one problem." Um, there was a lot of nuance to this, and these are the hardest conversations to have, where it's not one big thing that you can point to and that someone would get fired over if they didn't fix it. Um, but fixing these issues can change the tone and the quality of life of your office for years to come. And so these issues are worth addressing. They're worth going through a thought process like this. They're worth having these conversations, um, because it trickles. It trickles into your stress levels, your team's stress levels, your patient's comfort in the practice. And one conversation at a time is how you change that and you set these expectations. So we are so grateful that you brought this to us. Fingers crossed, best of luck, and we're excited to hear the results. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you for this. This has been great. It's great to get your guys' input and help us out with this. So yeah. Awesome.
And you'll do great. You will learn some things about your practice and yourselves in this conversation, and hopefully everything will come out roses. And if it doesn't, you will learn, and it will come out roses, just in a different way than you envision right now.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Hey, take care, everyone. Okay, I loved that. That was so much fun for me to get the perspective of people in the trenches dealing with eh, not drama, but a lot of dental practice happiness centers around the team's ability to get along with each other. And a lot of times there's one specific thing, and sometimes it's a performance issue, sometimes it's an attitude issue and a behavior issue. And if we're afraid to address these things, if we don't have the skills to address these things, it festers and it gets worse. So this was a great interview to hear just one of these little nitty-gritty issues that and at the beginning of the call, at the beginning of the interview, I was honestly a little bit worried that we wouldn't convey like Anne didn't sound that bad at the beginning of the call. And I was like, they're really frustrated with this situation. We gotta make sure that, we convey that. And eventually by, the middle of the interview, they'd conveyed why this was a problem and how this was permeating into the whole office. But a lot of times, these problems that we have are a little squirrely, hard to put our finger on and say exactly what the problem is. So I just loved getting into that and then coming up with conversations and tools and ways we can say things and think about it. And I really wish them the best of luck. I really hope this goes well for them. So thank you all for listening. We will talk with you guys next time on the Shared Practices podcast.